We did it. The pet damage is up to 68 million and beyond. Now I know barbs can do trillions of damage, but this is the best we get. The most interesting part about this is we can actually integrate it into an existing build. So it's not just like a petri dish laboratory, this could work. We have a build that would get so much stronger with this. Now first to the science, how do you higher the minions damage? And that's mostly down to your attack power. As you can see, we have 31,000 already. And if I do actually stand still, we go up to 40k. Yes. So the pet takes directly from your attack power. What does higher your attack power? Because that's where it gets interesting. Since damage while fortified does not have a direct impact on it, but damage while healthy does. Look at the Imbiber glyph here right now, correct? Well, we'll take it off. And we're at 29,000 only. Yep, 11,000 less. Now we're putting on Imbiber, damage while healthy, and that is its own kind of multiplier. Damage while everything in a bucket multiplied with our other damage. Brings us back to 40,000 directly. I do have the conceited aspect on, which gives us damage while barrier. Doesn't have any effect on our attack power directly. Still, though, gives us bonus damage while we have barrier, which doesn't work on the companion because he can't get barrier. But we can hire our all damage, and that is the main stat to actually hire. Intelligence, because intelligence scales everything, and all damage. And this one, you deal 170% increased damage for 6 seconds after the key passive triggers 10 times. Now, if I trigger my key passive 10 times, and you can see this here right now, we're going to go elite, multiple, we're going to, pop everything up here a little bit, and make some corpses, and then have our attack power scale up. And boom, that makes our minion vastly stronger. Now you can also see in the background ramping up the damage already slowly, because there's already millions happening on the left side, and then slowly the millions are getting higher, 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 and higher. So the more you hit, the more you do, the more it goes, and then it kind of goes with the poison support back and forth, because this is how the whole trick works. The pad creates cascading monstrous amounts of damage while still also doing very high amazing crits. Not only do you need to hire your attack power, you also need to hire your critical strike chance and damage. The more critical strike damage you have, the better. Gear ain't optimal for this right now. Also, vulnerable damage works extremely well, and as we said, all damage is one of the main scaling factors here. The damage while shadow is a test we're running with the dusk support, because you can turn parts of the minion damage into shadow damage. That happens over time, so that should work as well. Now you also do have your poison support, and the poison support essentially turns that into poison damage, and it has a 20% chance to bounce, okay? But that 20% to bounce means that it bounces to a target, and all the damage being dealt to that target can bounce again, and then that can bounce again, and that can bounce again. But if prior already had poison damage, that poison damage will bounce with it. So it's kind of like taking the millions and then taking the millions to the next, and then if there's already millions on that target, it's going to take it further, and then it goes around. Lastly, the burning support allows your pet to deal 40% multiplicative more critical strike damage. So if he already takes your critical strike damage off 700%, that was going to get multiplied by 40%. We're running Firefly. And Firefly shoots out a bunch of Fireflies with a multi-shot support that then pierce the enemy and seek back into it. So they go through and then back in and through and back in and do tremendous amounts of damage. Now, this is obviously here the petri dish working, but you can already guess if shadow damage is our scaling factor, there's a build that would perfectly be suited to make this work, wouldn't it? Also, keep in mind that we're currently running Inner Calm that gives us more damage as we're standing still. Now, as you can see, that's 9,000 attack power. Realistically, Inner Calm will not work in the world because we're not standing still. What would work though is Penitent Griefs. You do 10% more damage to frozen enemies. Because why not? I mean, like, we get frozen enemies, right? Works perfectly. And that also does work in certain builds. Now, there's one deciding factor too, and that is attack speed, because your attack speed also scales your minions' attack speed. So if you're able to hire the attack speed on your gloves with an aspect, here in my case, it's the overpower aspect, or there's core skill crits give you more attack speed, that will also translate over to the minion. Lastly, there's the Godslayer crown, which gives another 60% multiplier, which also impacts your minion damage, especially with the plus 20% damage. I mean, look at my attack power, 39, Boom. That gives another 2000 attack power. And again, as this is giving us 180% multiplicative, the more attack power we have, the better it goes. Now, this means we have to find a build where we can take damage while healthy in the Paragon board. We can put Imbiber Glyph on, and we can also boost our shadow damage as much as possible. Not to forget that we can boost our shadow damage by 15% times another 60% sacrifice bonus. And our Skeletal Mages allow us also to do more damage against vulnerable enemies, which also just works perfectly for the bot. And, well, we can increase our critical strike damage multiplicative. So all these things, they point into one thing, and that is the Gigadot Necro. If we want to get the most of our minion, we're going to be playing Blight together with Enhanced Blight and then also Supernatural Blight, because that hires, again, our damage multiplicative to me and my minions. But if I do more damage, the bot does more damage. Then we make more corpses and we turn our corpse explosion into shadow. We need more of this though. Now we can choose to also increase our critical strike chance here by 10% instead of making corpses. And since we do have the Hood Flesh to make us corpses, this might be enough to actually... This might be not needed. We're going to be testing a little bit more real-time scenarios, but as our bot is also killing things, we should be more than fine with this. Then we're getting the damage multiplier for consuming corpses. That also does work there. And more damage to cursed enemies, as we also get the damage reduction. And then more damage to close enemies, as our bot is kind of like standing into them most of the time. We have the corpse tendrils to pull together. And there's also the corpse tendrils multiplier on critical strike damage on corpse tendrils opponents. That should also go over to your bot. And we're pumping Gloom and Terror up, which also gives us more damage against shadow damaged enemies. Higher our sacrifice bonus, then we do more shadow damage and more damage against vulnerable. Very important, we want the attack speed, because if I have more attack speed, the bot has more attack speed. And lastly, for the Shadow Blight key passive damage, which is then responsible for scaling up our damage by 180%. Lastly, we get the Bone Storm for the damage reduction, but the bonus critical strike chance. And if we manage to keep this up all the time, then our bot also has consistently plus 20 critical strike chance. Last 3 points, we're pumping in a Blood Mist just to have Blood Mist more often. Now for the Paragon board, we want to get the Imbiber Glyph in, that's for sure. But we also do want to take the maximum amount of all damage plus. More all damage, more intelligence, the better it goes. So we're going to go over every single intelligence node that we can on our way. So this is strength, for example, willpower. Now we want the intelligence here, correct? And we're going to also be slotting something like sacrificial, which gives me a damage multiplier increase for my bot as well. And it hires the effectiveness of these glyphs as well. Have that to 12.5. Next up is the Flesh Eater board. So we're getting the 40% damage multiplier to higher our attack power tremendously. Here we need to take a little stop on the left side because we need that poison resistance to actually be able to bring our resistances up. We do more damage versus elites, and that damage versus elites should also work on the bot. Add some more resistance to it. And here we're going to be adding Essence. And don't worry, critical strike damage will work because we're going to play this with Ixfeld's Corroded Signet. Ergo, take all the dexterity nodes that you have. Some more intelligence, some more dexterity, right? And then on the way out, we're essentially taking some more intelligence. So dex and intelligence nodes. And here on the side, we're getting the Flesh Eater plus even more critical strike damage. To then hire the Firefly critical strikes on your minion, but also your Ixfeld's Corroded Signet explosions. Then, since we're an actual shadow build and we want to be making this an actual build and not just some power fantasy that works in a Petri dish, we're going into the Wither board. Here we take the damage reduction, so we do stay alive. We again take most intelligence and dex as we can and get the Wither node, and then we're moving our way all the way up here into more shadow damage over time. And more shadow damage. Shadow damage should technically profit the bot, right? More shadow damage versus elite, damage to shadow damage over time affected enemies. Yep. And then we're making our way in here. And we could slot the Imbiber in this case. I would usually go for Scourge here, but I don't have any of the shadow glyphs leveled up right now. So you can pump up Scourge, very good. Get another 10 intelligence because more intelligence, also shadow resistance for your all resistance, but more intelligence is in total more attack power. And we get this up to 44 for all the damage while healthy plus without having to take some weird ways into the next board. And here we're taking the Scent of Death, because Send of Death has even more critical strike damage sources, right? So we're going to be going in here. That is a huge amount of critical strike damage plus, right? And we're getting also another damage multiplier if there are no corpses. So if we explode all the corpses, perfection, and we get even more damage again. And here now we're going to be taking one specific glyph, and that is Exploit. Because Exploit gives us more damage versus vulnerable targets. We can also take some armor here and then a bunch of dexterity. Very easy to get this up. So more damage versus vuln as well, because that works. Now we said we also want damage while healthy boosted. And there is 2 boards we can do this. I mean, we have only 28 points left. And we can take the actual Bloodbath board, for example, since that has a node here that gives us huge amounts of damage while healthy. So you can just go from the side, boop, boop, and then you get damage while healthy, damage while healthy, damage while healthy. Now we could invest 2 more points to the damage while healthy, but this should be already good enough. Also, we can actually take the glyph here. And in this case, it might be interesting to think about Desecrated Ground, as we might take the blood-soaked aspect. While standing in your Desecrated Ground, you deal 50% increased shadow damage. The problem is, I'm not sure if the bot has to stand in the Desecrated Ground as well to get this, or if I'm standing in the Desecrated Ground, I'm getting the increased shadow damage, and then my bot automatically gets the increased shadow damage as well. Since that is a big unknown, what you could also do is you take these points here, boom, out of the Send of Death board into the Blood Begets. Because in the Blood Begets, we have right here another node that would give us damage while healthy, damage while healthy, and damage while healthy. So another huge chunk of that. We have 2 more points left over that we could then beef out our defense with a little bit more critical strike chance from the dexterity. Now, in order to have the Bone Storm permanently up, we would need a Lidless Wall. And then you would also like to have a wand that does critical strike damage, vulnerable damage, intelligence, all stats, kind of. Don't have the perfect one yet, but I guess we'll just take this one because it also does have corpse turtles on it. And we do have the amulet with the Shadow Blight key passive. And here again, you can be looking for more shadow damage, percentage of intelligence plus. Because there's the 10% int plus. I mean, if you have already 600 int, another 60 on top, why not? Percentage of damage plus, perfection. We want to play the Ring of Sacrilegious Souls to have like more lucky hit chance and everything happening. Your second ring would be Ixfeld's Corroded Signet, which gives you even more damage over time, the lucky hit chance, the cooldown reduction, so it just kind of works perfect with the whole build. Then on your boots, the Penitent Greaves actually do good because another 10% damage multiplier to chilled enemies. You chill enemies the whole time, so you and your bot do more damage to chilled enemies. On the pants, we're running the Bone Storm aspect that I'm continuously buried out, and that with the Lidless Wall, I continuously make Bone Storms. On your gloves, you could play the aspect of Ultimate Shadows to also turn your Bone Storm into Shadow Storm to just get more of your Shadow Blight key passive consistently up at all times. Now you want your lucky hit chance, critical strike, and attack speed to then higher your actual attack power even further. The chest piece can simply be Soulbrand, which gives you more damage reduction with Barrier, damage reduction in general from close enemies and maximum life, making you even better to hold down. Yes, on your pants, you definitely want a total armor percentage roll, as you do one on your amulet to push your armor further. As the helmet, I currently have the Godslayer crown. That could be the Godslayer crown, or any helmet with total armor percentage to push things higher again. Plus, here, you would then like to have the Corpse Explosion aspect to do more Corpse Explosions to reset your Corpse Explosion cooldown and be able to zoom over your opponents. Now, with the Seneschal Companion up, and this build, we should be able to just zoom through Nightmare Dungeons. Now, this is absolutely half-baked, but let's still go in a tier 100 dungeon and see what happens. In the vault proper, you essentially activate your Bone Storm, then Curse, Blood Mist, pull everything together, have your bot shrag them, have your damage go on, and then you just keep zooming, right? Curse, Blood Mist, have everything die, have your bot finally follow up on you. That's probably the biggest downside. Like, you just have to wait for your bot to come, right? And you cannot rely on that. You wanna be fast. So I mean, end of the day, you end up doing most of the damage anyways, unless you're in the final room. And I think that's just like here to kind of show you how the loop works. I mean, like, you understand how the build kind of does. Like you keep cursing, you keep zooming. But now let's jump to the final vault room to like then show you how simple it is essentially with your boosted companion to completely obliterate things. And then we're also going to just do a Varshan. I think I have enough materials for a Varshan. Are we having enough materials for? Yeah. So we can just quickly kill that too to just give you a feeling for how would an Uber boss look like. Now, final room, activating our Bone Storm, putting ourselves, I guess, here down in the corner, killing everything, making bonus Bone Storms, and having our pet companion essentially blast it all. I mean, we're just going to work on pushing our attack power higher by like we're standing on the sidelines and pushing our attack power higher. And this is essentially like the level of attack power you realistically achieve, right? Not Petri dish attack power, but it's still like respectable high values we're going for. The 170k is really like with a two-handed weapon and all that stuff going on. I mean, probably if you have Grandfather, we could go even higher. So Grandfather is an option to really then go with a bone build. Oh, and that's done. That was a tier 100 vault, me and my dude just completely shredding everything, and well, final Rome just being a complete joke while he just does all the crazy damage. But what about the Uber boss now? Let me grab my Duriel mats for that because, well, Duriel is what we want to farm. Also, one heads up already. I swapped back to Ghastly Blood Mist for the bonus corpses. The bonus critical strike chance is nice, but it just turns out that the build is less smooth. I was wanting to use the critical strike to essentially boost mine and the companions higher, but at the end of the day, the build gotta be also realistic, right? It gotta be feasible. You gotta have joy playing this and not just hate every second only for your bot to be a bit more efficient. Now, Duriel. And the plan here too, for have our minion just be like the absolute menace. Where you're gonna be activating the Bone Storm, right? We're gonna be nuking here his Duriel-esque dudes. Get rid of them. Do some corpse explosions here to higher our all damage. Try to get our Bone Storm back up another time. Make some corpses. Did I curse him? Now we're gonna see like the companion damage, like here, right? That's the companion. I'm not doing anything right now. I'm just gonna be pushing up. Like I'm gonna try to not do that much. I'm just gonna be pushing up my attack power, right? And we just have the companion go on. And he actually does it, right? He's fantastic. Like, good little boy. Good little boy. Come on. You see, I'm like, I can obviously go all out and just do more damage. So we do together billions of damage. But you notice how much damage he's already doing alone without me having to actually like go all out or do anything. So that's quite fantastic. That's like where we wanted to have this, right? We have a realistic build where I work, where what I do works, but also where the bot just supplements us, and in net total we are stronger afterwards and we're just looking very good. And it does exactly what we were hoping for. As another chest armor and an almost high roll soul brand. Now there's also Bone Spear build with a companion we will also cover. Until then, how about the Bone Spear Spirit build or new and enhanced Bloodlands?